Hello, everyone. This is Scott Moore, and you're watching the SMC Journal podcast, where it's all about performance engineering in IT today. Today's show is sponsored by Micro Focus, the makers of LoadRunner and LoadRunner Solutions. That includes enterprise, professional, cloud, and don't forget developer. Did you know that LoadRunner Solutions have the largest community of practitioners? Join their community at community.microfocus.com. Check out that QR code, and you can check out their performance engineering LoadRunner family page, as well as a playlist on YouTube where they discuss performance engineering topics with their product. This episode is also sponsored by Folk Consulting. Folk Consulting offers high-quality consulting services around application performance management, operational monitoring of system performance, application delivery, analytics, application performance testing, and digital management. I've known the people at Folk Consulting, including Ryan Folk, for decades now, and they have some consultants with many, many years of experience, and so you should definitely contact them if you need some experience resources in LoadRunner, Octoperf, and NeoLoad, any other products like that. You should definitely take a look and go to their website at folkconsulting.com. So today's show is a part 1 of 2 where I've got Mark Tomlinson back on the show, and we're talking about load testing vendors where there have been acquisitions or mergers over the last 2 years. And we're going to talk about 2 of those companies today. Let's get right into it and bring in Mark. Okay, I am here with Mr. Mark Tomlinson back on the SMC Journal podcast. Thank you, Mark, for being here.
Good to be here with you, Scott.
The load testing tools and the recent acquisitions, when I say recent, over the last, say, 24 months, there have been at least 4 what I would call major acquisitions of load testing tools. Mark, you were the product manager for one of the largest performance testing tools out there, load testing tools, LoadRunner, Mercury, HP, now Micro Focus. So they've gone through their whole merger acquisition stuff, but that's not what I'm talking about today, because I haven't asked you about this ahead of time. I want to know your thoughts about, if this person buys this person, think of the chess match that's kind of going on, because even though we don't like to get involved in that, we love everybody, we want to use any tool that's out there that works for us. But you know how vendors are. They got salespeople, they got people, and it's a competition, right? It's a chessboard. So I just want to get your thoughts about this. So are you ready? Ready for the load testing acquisition game?
I am ready. I'm ready to play the game.
Awesome. So the first one is going to be June 2020. Keysight Technologies purchases Eggplant Software. Okay, now this happened, and Eggplant, out of the UK, fairly small player in the grand scheme of things. However, being purchased by Keysight, whose annual revenue is equivalent to that of Micro Focus. So getting into a much bigger pond there. But on the other side, Keysight is not known for software. Keysight's known for more like oscilloscopes and 5G mobile technology chipsets and things to test that. They also own Ixia, who owns Chariot, network traffic type emulation stuff. So to me, that was kind of weird. So what do you think about that?
If you think of the popularity of plant software generally, and plant being Eggplant, and they have different names for plant load and stress and performance testing, which I've used in a couple different gigs over the last years. You can take, and we were big fans when I worked at Shunra, and James was on our customer advisory board. We're both big fans of the Ixia, the iChariot stuff. It was really, really cool. Load generation at a much lower level and tremendous flooding of stuff. But like you say, there are super techie nerds, not part of software development, ALM. They didn't have a story as far as software developer desktop market share. Like Keysight would be in the geek department, and very specifically in physical hard. So everyone moving to the cloud. Their customer base became a Google data center, an Azure data center, whatever cloud provider data center, right? Amazon data center. And you're very much so in the infrastructure weeds of helping the world's largest data centers test once and then replicate it by a couple million machines. it's very different than Keysight's going project by project or data center relocation type project work. So that's with that shift in the market, I could see Keysight saying we kind of need to get into the software development, application lifecycle game, and it wasn't so much the load and performance part of Plant that pulled them in. I think it was Keysight wanting to say, hey, let's get back into test and development, and performance will be akin to some of the other solutions. I would say we might see Plant software being able to drive low-level networking kinds of payloads. That could be interesting. But mostly I see Keysight size-wise staying relevant within software development and the QA test perspective that's happening with continuous delivery and such. So I think it's a good move from their perspective to not be made irrelevant as an appliance or a hardware on-premise kind of solution. They can play now in serverless. They can play in software development in more of a cloud-based world.
And I should also add, for our viewers' sake, so Mark and I know a lot of people in the industry, and we work with a lot of different companies. All the stuff we're talking about today, there's no insider information. We're not breaching any kind of NDA. This is just our thoughts from what you can find on the internet, right? So just want to make sure that we're clear on that. Because
in other words, these are my own insights, not informed, because I haven't really had this conversation outside of anyone but you and me, even though we know people at these different companies. Yeah.
But it's just something that was coming up in my head, and I wanted somebody to bounce it off of, and you're a good person to do that. And now I know a little bit more about Eggplant because Keysight's actually a sponsor of the SMC Journal. I don't want to make them mad either. So, but Eggplant has this DAI. They have a functional software. Jonathan Wright just went over to Keysight as their chief evangelist, working with the Eggplant tools. He's very well known in the Micro Focus community, Vivid, etc. So I mean, there's a lot of people who know a lot of people. I would put Eggplant Performance. I've actually used Eggplant Performance in an engagement before on a Citrix engagement, and it worked very well, and it was comparable to LoadRunner in terms of feature set. There's a controller, there's load generators, there's the scripting aspect, and instead of C, it's C#. So that was the biggest difference I saw. But it supports web, Citrix, TCP/IP applications, the basics, but it's not going to have all of the bells and whistles that a LoadRunner would have, nor do necessarily their customer base need that right now. So I see, just personally, I just see that was a move by Keysight to get into the software testing realm rather than just the hardware testing realm and the network testing realm. I think it could be a good move. And the thing that gives me, like, I don't know, it makes kind of my ears perk up when I heard about this was, you know, the size that they have and the amount of resources that they could put into innovation and bringing the tools forward. They could actually compete at a much broader and higher level than some of the other players that we're going to mention today. So
if I were a PM at Eggplant, overload and performance, I would basically look around the room and see that nobody except for Micro Focus, big player, was in the C# kind of Microsoft realm. And I would say, you know what, let's start scoping that part of the market, because we know recently Microsoft sort of exited load testing a little while ago, but they said Visual Studio wise, they were done. Microsoft, then also Azure, has Azure load test doing the JMeter kind of wrap it and run it in the cloud thing. So all of a sudden you got all these Microsoft people moving over to run Bean Shell scripts in JMeter. I don't think so. So I think there's still a tremendous opportunity, as you say, for Plant to do something very cool. And hopefully it's an uphill battle. I mean, it's a very as we know, it's been very fragmented tool market for a while now, but lots of great solutions. So they're in a competitive spot there, I think. Some interesting approach.
So the next one is closer to home for me, which is Tricentis purchases Neotis for the Neoload product in March of last year. And for transparency purposes, I did work for Tricentis last year from about March, April to October of last year. So the only thing though that I know, I knew this before the acquisition. I worked with Neotis as a partner. I've used
Yeah.
Neoload on several engagements. I had not used any of the Tricentis products. Well, they did have Flood, and I did test out Flood as far as demoing it and for just trying proof of concept type things. And I kind of look at, well, let me back up. I guess I should say, just to mention Flood, comparing that to, say, a Redline 13 or a
Yep.
Blaze Meter or any other tool where you really need to scale up JMeter, but you're pulling in third parties for your scripting, for your business processes and all that. So now Tricentis gets this contract with SAP. And I remember when that happened, and I said, they're going to need SAP support for performance testing and specifically SAP GUI. And I knew
Yep.
Flood didn't have that. And then
Oh,
the
yeah.
next thing you know, we're gonna purchase Neotis to get Neoload because it had the SAP GUI support. It also had Citrix and some beyond just the typical web protocol. To me, that was the smartest move they could have made because otherwise they're going to have to build it themselves. And Neotis, I know they're great company, great people, and they're together now. They're moving forward with it, and I keep hearing about a release about every 3 to 4 months. I think it's quarterly releases, so they're taking the product forward very quickly. And out of the tools that could compete with LoadRunner per se in terms of feature set, protocol breadth, and all that, seems like Neoload would be that candidate right now. Would you agree?
Sure. Yeah, I think so. One comment I'll say about working with SAP and actually having tool support. We had a generous, long history with Windrunner, LoadRunner, and the entire Mercury products working in partnership, lockstep to some extent. I've been in Waldorf meeting with the folks there back when I worked in that role, and that company, SAP themselves, have a tremendous amount of sway over compatibilities, integrations, and supports, which is why you probably don't see an SAP R3 protocol within like a JMeter or an open source tool or something. It's just not how they envision operating in the world. And it doesn't fit with the business platforms for the system integrators that they work with. So if I'm in Tricentis's spot, and I agree with you, they might be saying, well, not only do we have a backlog of SAP projects that we need load and performance, and like you said, at the same time, they probably, I would have done if I were in that position, I'd look at what's the health and status for SAP support in LoadRunner, SAP support within Micro Focus. And I might take a competitive stance there, as you stayed out, and be like, of all the things that Micro Focus is going to prioritize for investment in the product, like the webinar you covered recently in another SMC journal, SAP might not be at the top of the list. When I was working at HP, it was always within the top of the list. There was always, what are we doing for SAP? What are the top 10 things we need to fix in patches? What are the top 10 things for the next release? We had a backlog that was not just keep the lights on for SAP. It was, what do they want? What do they need? Because every customer that they have, it's a huge market. So I think Tricentis make a smart move. If I were in their shoes, I'm looking also maybe some lagging support from Micro Focus in the SAP world and pull that in. But let's not set SAP aside for a second. There's some tremendous innovation that even Henrik and the teams had left right recently that Neoload they have great ideas that they're still executing on. And I'll see that over the next year. So I think Tricentis was also impressed with the operation, the efficiency, the innovation roadmap. And it's a nice complement as we see Neoload cloud capabilities and Flood coming together, because you can have people grow up out of JMeter. I'm kind of growing old or growing out of that tool, even though I've got some new stuff that I need better recording support and stuff. So I could see them looking at Flood and saying, we can see how to transition and upsell people from Flood back into a Neoload solution. And I think that's probably what I would do.
Well, there you have it. I hope that you learned something today. Maybe this causes you to have some discussions about some of the products that you know about or probably use day to day. I will be inviting these vendors that we mention on the show to watch this. I hope they watch it, and I hope that they'll respond. Maybe we can get some of them on the show, and they can talk about the acquisition. They can talk about their product roadmap, what they can share, and we'll have that on the show when we can. So I'd like to get your feedback now. You can always reach me at scottmoore.consulting through LinkedIn and through Twitter. You can also subscribe to the YouTube channel so that you'll see when these videos come out, and you'll be able to watch them as soon as they arrive. This podcast is usually published on Tuesdays and Thursdays, 8 a.m. Eastern Time each week. And finally, you can also reach me at help@scottmoore.consulting. We'd love to hear your feedback and where we take the show. Tell me what you like, what you don't like. Appreciate everybody who watches the show. And until I see you on the second part of this podcast for the load testing vendor acquisitions with Mark, I'll see you next time. This is Scott Moore. Bye-bye.